Hello there, and then welcome to a brand new lesson. This is Half Beyond Numbers, where we learn maths the easy way. In this lesson, we are looking at factorization. Look at factorization and then compare it to expansion. And then we see why factorization is important. After which we look at one method of factorization, which is factorization by common factors. Without much ado, let's quickly look at it. So let's start off with what factorization means. Factorization is the process of rewriting an expression as a product of its factors. If you have any expression at all, let's take an example as 3x and then plus 6. If we want to factorize this, then we want to rewrite it as a product. Product simply means multiplication. So what other two factors of this number would multiply to give us this? And that is 3 into bracket x plus 2. Don't worry about how it was done, but then I want you to understand what factorization means, after which we'll look at how we actually factorize. So as you can see, this here represents a sum of two terms. This, on the other hand, represents what? Product of two terms. We just wrote this we have here as a product of its factors, and that is what we call factorization. Now, you should know that factorization and expansion are opposite processes. So what factorization does, expansion undoes. And what expansion does, factorization will also undo it. What do I mean by that? Under expansion, you can have 3 into bracket x plus 2, expanding to give you 3x plus your 6. That is multiplying your 3 by the x and then multiplying your 3 also by the 2. But under factorization, you would rather have 3x plus 6 being factorized as what? 3 into bracket x plus 2. So what we had as the result of the expansion is factorized back to give us what we have over here. So factorization is simply the opposite of expansion. Now, before we actually go through the process of factorization, why is it even important at all? Why is factorization important? When we factorize, we're able to simplify algebraic expressions. We are able to rewrite them in their simplest form. Secondly, factorization also helps us to solve algebraic equations, as you would see in subsequent lessons. Factorization also helps us to cancel terms in fractions. And finally, factorization helps us find the root of quadratic equations. So if you needed a note on that, this is just it. Now, there are so many methods of factorization, but for this introductory video, we'll be looking at factorization by common factors. Factorization by common factors. When we talk of a common factor, it is a number or variable that divides every term in an expression. If we take the terms 6a squared b, and another term that is 9ab. Now, if we want the common factors, then let's first of all consider the numbers. So we have 6 and 9. What number do you think can divide both of these numbers? It is 3. 3 can divide 6 and it can also divide 9. Though 2 can divide 6, it cannot divide 9. Hence, it is not a common factor. So the common factor is simply that number that can divide both. So for the numbers, we can say we have 3. 3 is a common factor. Now, what of the variables? There is a here, and then there is also a over here. So that becomes a common factor. There is also a b here, and then there is also a b over here, and that also becomes a common factor. So how do we use these common factors to actually factorize? So with the help of common factors, these are the steps that we can use to what factorize. The first is we find the highest common factor of the coefficient, and by the coefficient we mean the numbers. After finding the highest common factor, you now find the highest common factor of the variables. Now for the variables, you take note, you rather look for the lowest power of the common letters. In this case, we had a squared and then we had a here. To get its highest common factor, we take the one with the lowest power. A has a power of 1. This, on the other hand, has 2. So we took that which has the lowest power. But for B, they all have the same power. So we take any of them. If you are able to get your highest common factor, both of the coefficients and then the variables, you now factor it out and divide each and every term by the highest common factor and put your result inside the bracket. Let's solve some examples so we actually see how these steps work. So in this first example we have here, it says 3x plus 6, and we have to factorize. We'll go through the steps so you understand. This is a very basic example, and as you understand the basic ones, we'll take it to much more complicated ones so that you see how it is solved. So we have 3x plus 6. Step 1 says find the highest common factor. The highest common factor of what? 3 and 6. That is the numbers. So the highest common factor of 3 and 6 is obviously 3. That is the biggest number that can divide both 3 and 6. Step 2 says we should then look for what? The highest common factor. The highest common factor of the variables. And looking at what we have here, it is only this first term that has a variable. This has not got a variable. Hence, there is no need even doing the step 2. So we go to the next one, which says we should divide each and every term by our highest common factor so that we can get what we can write in the bracket. So first of all, let's write this highest common factor we've gotten. Let's write it out here, then into bracket. So this first term, which is 3x, we divide it by what we have outside here. We divide it by 3. Canceling, we have 3 canceling out 3, so that we have x remaining. X comes here. Then we now have positive 6. So positive 6 also divided by 3. 3 divides itself once, then into 6, how many times? Twice. So plus 2. Then we close our bracket. There is nothing else to do here, and this becomes our factorized form of 3x plus 6. Very simple. Following the rules, we said what? Find the highest common factor of the coefficient, after which we find that of the variables if it exists. In this case, we had no variable here, so we didn't even go there. If you get your highest common factor, which in this case was 3, we divide each and every term by the 3. So divided by 3, divided by 3. This 3 cancels out this 3. And then this also divides this to give us 2. So with our highest common factor out, we now have x plus 2. And that is what we have as our solution over here. Let's look at more examples. In this next example, we have to factorize 4x plus 4xy. Take note, we have 4x plus the 4xy. So we always know our first step is to look for a highest common factor of the coefficients. In this case, they are even all the same. That even makes it very simple. So we would look for the highest common factor of the two terms. A highest common factor of both terms, that is 4x and 4xy. That is a number that can divide both of them. For the numbers, we have our 4. Then for the variables, we have x here and then there's also x here. So we can take that as the common term of both variables. With our highest common factor written out, which is 4x, we said we'll divide each and every term by what we have factorized out here. By so doing, what I mean is we have our 4x plus 4xy. We are dividing each term by 4x. Divide each term by 4x. Doing that, you have 4 cancelling out 4, x cancelling out x to give us 1. 4 divides 4 as well. And then x also divides x as well. And we are left with just y. So this first term gives us a 1. Then we have plus this other term gives us the remaining y, which then becomes our factorized form of 4x plus 4xy. Very simple. Following the rules, we look for our highest common factor. To get your highest common factor, you divide each and every term by the highest common factor, and you'll be able to determine what you have remaining in the bracket. Now, you'd always not get terms with linear powers, or let me say terms whose exponents are just 1. There are some times where you get powers of 2, 3, and then what have you. We'll solve 2 more examples. In the first one, we'll look at the one that has a power not 1 but then 2. And then in the last example, we'll look at how to factorize 3 terms, not just 2 terms, so a trinomial. So looking at this example here, we have 6a squared with a b minus 9ab. And we want to factorize this. Looking at the coefficients, there is 6 and then 9. What do they have as their common term or their highest common factor? That is definitely 3. Then for the variables, we have a squared and then a here. As we said, you should always take that with the lowest power. So we take our a, then we come to b and then b. So since there are b both present, we'll take just one of them. This becomes our highest common factor of the first term and the second term. We now introduce our bracket, and then we divide each and every term by our highest common factor. For the very first one, which was 6a squared b, which can also be written as 6a b for simplicity sake, so that you can easily cancel out. So you are dividing it by 3ab. 3 divides itself once and it divides 6 twice. A divides a, one of these a's, and then this b also cancels out this b. And for the numerator, we have 2a over 1, which is the same as what? 2a. Hence, for our first term here, we put our 2a. Then we come to the next term, which is negative 9ab. So we are dividing it once again by the highest common factor we had over here, which was 3ab. So cancelling out, we have 3 dividing itself once and then dividing 9 3 times. This a cancels out to this a, and then this b cancels out to this b. So we are left with what? A negative 3. So we put that negative 3 here. And that is just it. So I can choose to claim this here, which is not part of our solution. And this is what we have here. It simply means factorizing 6a squared b minus 9ab. We are going to get the product of 3ab and 2a minus 3. What if the terms are 3, as I said earlier on? So in our last example here, we are looking at 12x cubed y squared minus 18x squared y cubed plus 6x squared y squared. How do we go about such an expression? So the first thing we need to look out for is the coefficient. We have 12, we have 18, and then we have 6. What is their highest common factor? The highest common factor of all of this is our 6. Because 6 divides 12, it divides 18 and also divides 6. Now, what of the variables? If you look through the x, they all have powers. And we said the easiest way to get their common factor is by taking the lowest one. So we take x squared, and then for the y as well, we take our y squared. As you can see, this x here was cubed, this was squared, then this was squared. Hence, the lowest is the squared. Same applies to the y. As we have our highest common factor of all the three things, we then look for what remains after we divide each and every term by the highest common factor. For the very first one, which was 12x cubed y squared, we are dividing it by what? 6x squared y squared. So this 6 cancels out, or it divides 12 to give us a 2. So we write that 2 here. Then this x squared cancels out 2 of the x's we have here. That is applying division of algebra, or applying the laws of indices, so that this reduces this by 2. And by that reduction, we have what? We have just 1 here. And then this y squared also cancels out this y squared. So with that, we have our 2x remaining as the numerator. We write our 2x over here. We now come to the next term, which is a negative 18x squared, then y cubed. We are dividing by our highest common factor here, which is 6x squared y squared. 6 divides itself once, and then it divides negative 18 negative 3 times. 6x squared takes out this x squared, and 2 of the y's here takes out 2 of the y's here. Then we are left with just 1 of the y's. That is y to the power 1. With that, we can rewrite it as negative 3. So we have negative 3. You know, all we have in the denominator here is 1, because they have all been cancelled out. So negative 3y. Then we come to our last term, which is a 6x squared y squared. And we are dividing it by our highest common factor, which is 6x squared y squared as well. 6 cancels out 6 once. X squared divides x squared once. Y squared divides y squared once as well. So 1 times 1 times 1. And that gives us a positive 1. There is nothing left to simplify. Hence, this is our factorized term. What we have over here. That is our answer. We factorize this that we were given in the question. And in all, we followed the procedure. You first of all look for the highest common factor of the coefficient and the variables. You bring it outside your bracket and then keep dividing each and every term inside the bracket, and you get your factorized term. Now, this is how beyond numbers where we learn maths the easy way. As usual, I'll leave you with some exercises so you try on your own to test your understanding. So here you have 5 questions to try on your own to test your understanding. Once again, this is how beyond numbers where we learn maths the easy way. If this is your first time on this channel and you think it will be of help to you, you can subscribe if you so do wish. So anytime I release a video, you'll be notified as well. See you in our next lesson, and bye for now.